I want to tell you the story of a kingdom in which people were lazy, they were all the same, they liked paperwork, and they would accomplish a task if the task was very, very easy. If the task was a little bit difficult, they would do as little as possible just to keep the king, this was the king, happy. Just to keep the king happy, they would do a little bit of the task and they would pass the rest of the task to someone else. And because they had always done this throughout their history, the name of each one was next one. So the first one always was the king, whose name was also the first one. So the first one gave the task to the first next one. These next ones, people of that kingdom, were always at home. The king would send a messenger to, let's say, next one who is in address 1, ask him, hey, you should do a task. So how did it work? The king had a task, for example, let's say answering 3 questions. So he had 3 questions which had to be answered. He put these 3 questions on an envelope and sent the messenger to a next one and gave him these 3 questions. The next one would do as little as possible. Let's say would answer one of the questions and would tell the king, hey, Mr. King, this is my address. I'm going to give the rest of the task to the next one. And when he returns with the rest of the answers, please send someone to my address. Then I will come put my results beside the results of the next one and give them to you. The king said, okay. So he kept one of the answers with himself. The king accepted always just if everything was done and called the next one. So let me write, this was the address 1. The address 1 was that who is written here. So this guy was living in address 1 and his address is on a paper on the desk of the king. Then the second next one, it's indicated like this. The second next one would call another next one after he had done as little as he could, which means answering one of the 2 questions, and would give the rest of the tasks to this third next one. And would have told the king, hey, king, this is my address. After this guy returns with his answer, I will put his answer beside my answer and I will pass it to the guy who has called me. So this guy had just 1 question to answer. He already could not pass it to someone else the king would get angry. He had to do at least the simplest task. So this guy was the first guy who had accomplished a task, completely done a task. So what would happen? He would tell the king, I'm done. What should I do? The king would say, take this address put it in your packet, go and find the next one. He would go and find this guy and give him his address, his answer, which should come here. Then after that, after this guy has come back with his answer, this guy already has both answers. Then what would happen? He would tell the king, hey, Mr. King, I'm done with my job. The king would say, okay, take the toughest address and go to the one who had written that address there, that means this guy, and give the answers to him. Say, okay, he gave it. And then the first next one goes to the king and gives him the complete answer. So the life worked like this there. They had even a constitution, how this should work. So they had a constitution, the law of work, on the name of the nation with the same name, next one. It was about the task. It means that if the king calls someone and gives him a task, what is someone? Is the next one. If the king has called a next one and has given him or her a task, if the task is too easy, return the result R. They called the results R. So you give the R back to the person, or perhaps to the king who has given you the task. If it is not that easy, you put the results of a little work in R, and what you do, combine your results R with the results of calling the next one with the rest of the task. So someone received a task. If the task was too easy, he or she would do the task, put it in a container with the name R, and return it to the person who had given him or her the task. If the task was not easy, he would do a little bit of work. Actually, this was as little as possible. He would put the results in a container with the name R, and then he would combine these results with the results of the work of the next one on the rest of the problem. So this was the way that they were working, living, and thinking. So one day the king wanted to know how many people are in his country. He follows his constitution. He asks the first next one about the count of people. And the law is like this. If too easy, so how would we if too easy? Too easy. If you are alone in a country and the king asks you how many you are, then you would simply ask the king 1. So if the count was 1, the next one would return a 1. If not, he has to do as easy as possible task and pass the rest of the task to someone else. What would be as easy as possible task for a person who was asked to count a nation? Simply count himself or herself and tell the others or the other the next one. When you tell me how many the rest of the nation are, then I would add myself to the rest and report to the king. So else this person would simply add a 1, which is himself or herself, to the results that the next one would bring after receiving the rest of the task. The rest of the task means the rest of the nation without the first next one. And believe it or not, this problem is solved here. They didn't need to call the next one and the next one and the next one. Why? Because the next one himself would call the next one and the next one and the next one, till one of the next ones would be left alone, and that next one would report a 1. And that time we would stop counting. So how does this work? The first one was called by the king and had written his address on a paper on the desk of the king. Then he calls the next one. The next one puts his address on the desk of the king, and so on till the guy who was left alone, and that guy would come to these addresses one by one. Sorry, would come to the pile of the addresses, to the stack of the addresses, take the top one, go after the second last person, and hand over the results to him in front of the king. And the second last one would take the results of the last one, which is 1, to the result of himself, which is 1 plus the result of the rest is now 1 plus 1, it means 2, and go to the next one, find him, report to him, and then the second next one would come to the first next one and report to him the results, the final results, and then the results would be reported to the king. So this was one case when the problem was solved in the lazy way. So there was a day that the king was fantasizing for himself how he would solve a problem like this. For example, the problem of multiplication of 1 to 2 to 3 to, let's say, n minus 1 to n. And n could be any number. Like here is 4, here is 5, here is 4, for example. And he was thinking how he could solve this problem using his lazy people and the constitution of that lazy country. That is a famous problem with the name factorial. he said he wants to have a part of this nation, because for this, depending of this the n, he would need just a part of the nation. Of course, that would change. That part of the nation could not be a fixed part, but while being busy with this task, he wanted to give them a name. Instead of the next one, he said, I will call them factorial. This was the name of the problem. He said, I will call a factorial with an n. With an n. This n can be any number. Then this lazy factorial would look at the number and say, if it is very, very easy, it means if it is 1, then he would come back to me with a 1. He would say 1 factorial, which means the multiplication of the numbers from 1 to 1 is 1. Else, I know that this lazy guy is going to do just one step and pass the rest to the next one, to the next factorial. He would tell me that n factorial is n multiplied to the factorial of n minus 1. It means, for example, if I ask him what is 5 factorial, he would tell me this is 5 multiplied to 4 factorial. And this way the problem would be solved. And he wrote this somewhere in one of his laws to be able to later solve the problem of factorial. Then he was thinking, fantasizing, what if I wanted to do something else? If I wanted to reverse a text, a letter, so that the enemies cannot understand it. For example, I have written here, hello nation. I want to reverse it so that the enemy cannot read it. I call this, let's say, str for a string which contains my message. Then I want to have a part of nation, let's say my army, with the name reverse. The reverse, each of them would receive a string from me. And what would be the easiest task that they could do, they could accomplish completely? He said, if I have a string with the length 1, then the reverse would return the string itself. It means, for example, if I give them just a task A, then what if the string is bigger than 1? What would this lazy guy answer, following the constitution of lazy people, that you do as little as you can? He would say, he would return the last letter of the string that I give to him. Let's say I call it last letter together with the reverse of the str without last letter. So what would this guy, why would this guy do this? The reverse of the string will start from the last one. So this lazy but smart guy would tell me, you tell me what is the result reverse of this part, the reverse of this part. I will write it, and I will write it, the reverse of this part, and I put the last letter of the string to the beginning. This way, the problem of reversing also was solved. Then he faced another problem that he had to solve. What was that problem? That was the famous problem of Fibonacci. So the king wanted to solve another problem, also about encoding and hiding information so that the enemies will not find out what he is telling to the nation. One of these problems was the problem called Fibonacci. The problem of Fibonacci is like this. You start from two ones, you add them to each other, you get 2. Then you continue, but always adding the two last numbers to each other and proceeding this way. So 2 and 3 are 5, 5 and 8 added to each other are 8, so 5 and 3 are 8, 5 and 8 give you 13, and so on. So if you want to know what is in the position 5, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the position 5, if you want to know what is written, you should know what was written in the position 2 and 3. You add them to each other to get to position 5. What is in the position 5? So this was the problem that he had. So he thought, okay, what is the, I call that group of people, next ones, Fibonacci, for short, Fib. I would give them a position and ask them what is the number in that position. Or ask them to the first next one, whom I call now a Fib or a Fibonacci. What would he do, this lazy guy? I would think, if I am in the position 1 or 2, he would tell me 1. So if P is equal to 1 or P is equal to 2, he would return a 1. Else, so this is the easiest possible solution, that he doesn't need to think and he cannot pass it to anyone else. Else, if the task is a little bit more difficult and we are in the position 3 or any other position after the position 2, what would he do? He would ask the two previous guys, he would ask to find two next ones, and give one of them the Fibonacci, give one of them the p minus 1 and the other one p minus 2. So he would wait till these two guys return and would report or return the summation of these two. This problem also was solved. So following the constitution, you go for the easiest solution, you return immediately, else you call other people. And what was the easiest task that this guy did was adding two numbers to each other that he even doesn't have yet. So this problem also was solved. So this nation was remembered by its way of solving problems in the history. And those people, next one, were called simply functions. And because these functions would recursively calling each other, the nation, the mirror, or each of them was called a recursive function. Each of them was called a recursive function, and this way of solving problems stayed in the history, and we are still using it.